Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, Ali Sharma here, and welcome to the first vlog of a DIY stitch and glue fiberglass surfboard build video. I believe there will be more videos in this one, in this video series, so let me take you step by step. First thing I'm going to do in this video is to form a board and stitch it, then glue it, add some strength to it in the middle, like ribs we call them. Once that is done, I will be doing the waterproofing, like making sure the water doesn't get in, then put a top part on, fiberglass it, and then cut the places for the battery box and motors and stuff. So let's get to work.
Alright, let's get to work. My first task was to cut the pieces of plywood according to my measurement. So I ended up cutting, in fact, 4 pieces while I needed only 3 in the beginning. Made a mistake, but nonetheless I could use that piece later. I used my plane tool to make these 2 pieces equal, and after that I had to cut the shape on the bottom part. After cutting the bottom part shape, all I needed to do was to plane it and drill holes in all these 3 pieces and stitch them together using zip ties. Zip ties are actually doing a very good job holding these pieces together. Now, I do not like to waste wood or other resources that I have, so after stitching these 3 pieces, the rear and middle pieces I made using the part of the plywood that I cut wrong previously, and I just made a good use of it. No wasting of wood and resources here during this build. So I stitched these 2 parts together as well to form the first shape of my surfboard. To make the ribs and to make the surfboard stronger in the middle, I used these wooden strips that I bought very cheap in the local market, hardware depot, and I cut them according to the measurements. That was just quick measuring right there to make the ribs quickly. After that, I used a very quick AB epoxy to seal the sides very quickly. This is kind of draft seal, but I would be doing the proper sealing later. Once this was done, I used the same epoxy to add these ribs together. This is a metal epoxy. Once it gets hard, it's just like metal. So I was not worried about the strength of this epoxy on the ribs. These ribs are going to stay really hard and strong. Later I removed all the stitches and it was time to move on to the next steps. I cut the excess plywood, used my plane tool to plane and make all the ribs and sides equal so that I can put the top part of the plywood base and complete the surfboard build. But before that, there are more things to do.
Okay, this step is done. Now all the surfaces are nice and good. I have removed the stitches, those zip ties, and it is holding very well. Now the next steps are pretty simple. I have done proper sealing on the sides where I stitched it, but still if there is a doubt that the water will slip in, I thought I would go with this thing. This is a kind of a spray that people use to seal the rooftops, for raining season, so the water will not pour in through cracks and stuff. So I got it pretty cheap. I'm thinking 1 coat of this inside on the sides, it's gonna do a lot good, and it will seal all the openings, all the cracks, and waterproof it, so water will not flow in.
Next, I cut 2 pieces of wood according to the measurements. I'm going to add these pieces of wood using a lot of epoxy generously at the back side of the surfboard, because this is where I will be installing the electric motor mounts using the screws, and I needed something where I can put the screws without getting worried. Now I cut the foam because I wanted to fill the middle part. If I leave it empty, I was worried that plywood wasn't too strong even after putting the fiberglass and epoxy, so I added these foam parts as added strength in the middle. Removing the stitches left some hole, and it was very easy to seal everything and watertight every corner using this spray that people use during rainy seasons to waterproof the rooftops. After that, I use expanding foam to glue the pieces of the foam, and also added the rest of the expanding foam on the front and other open areas. Building the top was easy. It's just to put the plywood on top, take measurements, cut it, and put it on top. In the beginning, I went ahead with my hand saw, cut the shape that I wanted, and after that I drew line where the ribs were so I could join the top part of plywood using nails very quickly. So I added a couple of nails to join the top.
Well, I wasn't fast enough for the expanding foam, and while I cut the top part, the foam expanded and pushed the XPS and also itself. So this one was like kind of curvy, but fixing it with a 502 quick glue, you know, is just piece of cake. So my clamps came in handy. I added the clamps, I just pour this glue, and it gets really nice, you know, solid. So you can see right here, it is really nice and solid.
Next, I went ahead cutting the excess plywood from the sides and used my plane tool to nicely plane all the corners and made all the edges nice and smooth to get it ready for fiberglass. Then I sanded the whole board very quickly using my rotary sander. Last steps are to add the fiberglass on the bottom and top using the El Stinko epoxy that I have. So I went ahead, poured all the epoxy generously and added the fiberglass on top. This is a pelt, in fact fiberglass pelt, which are very difficult to bend on the corners.
Now, the problem I'm facing is that the epoxy dries very quickly. It gets warm and dries very quickly, so I have to move fast. I have to work very fast. And I'm not mixing too much hardener. It's like 100 ml you get 1 ml hardener, and that's what I'm mixing exactly. In colder days they said 2 ml in 100 ml, and at hotter days 1 milliliter of hardener into 100 ml of a milliliter of epoxy. But with the ratio right, it dries very quickly. It starts to dry quickly, and I have to move very fast. But anyway, I am able to do the bottom part, and now it's getting dry very quickly, but it's still slightly sticky. So I'll give it one night, and next morning I'll turn it over and do the other side, and then second layer, and it should be ready.
Next morning, my Bengali friend Jamil came over to help me fiberglassing the top. We did that. Now all we need to do is wait for it to dry. After that, next steps are to add the poly putty, make everything smooth, give it a nice sanding, add fins, and get it ready to install the battery box and electric motors. Well, thank you very much for watching this first vlog of a stitch and glue DIY electric surfboard with plywood. Stay tuned for the second vlogs and more videos on my channel.